Forging, also known as tanren, is an important process in making Japanese swords. Tamahage, a steel made from iron sand, is hammered thin, folded, and hammered again to strengthen it and establish the right carbon content. Through this, tanren, and several other highly skilled processes, the lump of steel is transformed into a beautiful, strong katana. Walking out under the burning sun, Chihiro and his father headed over to their sword store to start their day's routine of crafting blades. You see, Kunoshige Rokuhira, Chihiro's father, was actually the most famous swordsman in all of Japan due to the unique method that went into creating his katana. Every day, Chihiro rigorously trained with him in the art of bladecraft. Despite his father's immense skill and seriousness while forging a blade, Kunoshige definitely had a bit of a goofy side to him. One day, he returned home with a few goldfish he'd bought after visiting the local sword polisher. Chihiro obviously wasn't thrilled, knowing he'd ultimately be the one stuck taking care of them. To his own exasperation, Kunoshige explained that the shopkeeper said the red goldfish brought good fortune, and the black one warded off evil, and the three-coloured one was just totally amazing. Handling his father's eccentric whims was a handful, but Chihiro accepted it as simply a part of his daily life. One day, while the two were busy hammering away in the forge, they were visited by Kunoshige's old friend, Togo Shiba. After initial pleasantries, Shiba sat down at the table with Chihiro. Teasingly told to shut it, Shiba revealed that Kunoshige's blades had played a pivotal role in ending the Seiti War 15 years earlier. Looking at the young boy, Shiba reminded him that his father was a hero who saved countless lives. Chihiro had heard this story and the constant comparisons between himself and his father innumerable times, but he never grew tired of them. After Shiba ended up leaving, Kunoshige noted that Chihiro would soon turn 15. Hearing his son's continued zeal for swordsmithing, he decided it was time to show him another side of the craft. Kunoshige led Chihiro to a room housing a single displayed katana, explaining that it was forged before Chihiro was born and used during the war with several others stored in the basement. As Kunoshige held the katana, he reflected on how swords, while tools for saving lives, are fundamentally instruments of death. Swordsmiths, he explained, bear the responsibility for whatever consequences their creations bring. With one swift strike, he cut through a bamboo stand, emphasizing that a katana in the wrong hands could take innocent lives, something a smith must always keep in mind. He emphasized that a katana must only be used to defeat evil and protect the weak. Therefore, swordsmiths need strict principles and accountability. Kunoshige asked Chihiro if he could shoulder the weight of crafting and entrusting a weapon to someone, knowing the devastating impact it might have. Though uncertain, Chihiro voiced his commitment to taking on that heavy responsibility. Hearing that was all Kunoshige needed. All that remained for him was to put his trust in his son. 38 months later, the Korigumi Yakuza are executing members of the anti-Korigumi movement, leaving only one remaining survivor. The captive prisoner yells about how their once peaceful city descended into chaos following the arrival of the Korigumi, who used violence to seize control over the land and its wealth. A Yakuza member sharply slaps and threatens the prisoner, boasting about their high-profile supporters, though the prisoner remains unfazed by the mention of sorcerers. A man in a fedora seated on a nearby platform within the building speaks up. Intrigued by the prisoner's defiance, he summons tree branches to surround the captive as he descends the stairs. The sorcerer asks if the prisoner has ever encountered sorcery before, remarking that bravery often stems from pure ignorance. Turning his attention to the Yakuza boss, the sorcerer states that the Korigumi's methods are irrelevant as long as they maintain payments to his organization. Still, he expresses mild concern over nuanced groups causing disruptions. With a quick hand gesture, the sorcerer then vanishes into thin air, leaving behind a brief burst of flame. Elsewhere, Chihiro sits on a train bound for their target city when Shiba approaches, munching on some grilled smelt, which honestly just kind of looks like grilled cheese to me. I think that is what grilled smelt is, not 100% sure. Someone can probably let me know down below. As Shiba continues eating, he comments on the prominent scar on the upper left side of Chihiro's face, suggesting that he get it removed. Chihiro explains that seeing the scar every morning in the mirror serves as a stark reminder of the day his life changed, filling him with fresh hatred every single day. Shiba points out that harboring such a long-standing grudge could end up destroying him, prompting Chihiro to ask rhetorically if Shiba plans on stopping him. The duo then arrives in the city, which Shiba introduces as a territory ruled by the Korigumi Yakuza. Chihiro curiously asks if the syndicate has any link to the Ishaku. Shiba admits he isn't certain, but notes that it's their only real lead. Chihiro suggests they gauge whether the Yakuza are open to reason before making their initial move. Nearby, local residents whisper about the gruesome sight of several bodies hanged at the entrance of a massive torii gate. The corpses belong to the anti-Korigumi movement, a public execution for opposing their syndicate. Visibly angered by the sight, Chihiro asks Shiba for the location of the Korogumi base and demands to be taken there immediately. Outside of the stronghold, several Yakuza members sit casually at the entrance, keeping watch while chatting about eliminating anyone foolish enough to intrude. Midway through their conversation, a flying wakizashi strikes one of the guards, fatally slashing the throat of the man sitting in front of the guy that was just talking. Chihiro then leaps onto the Yakuza table, retrieves his wakizashi, and spins gracefully, slitting the throats of every single guard in range. Inside, the bound prisoner lies on the floor while the Korogumi boss orders his men to capture the man's sister. Terrified, the prisoner breaks and agrees to surrender all of the information he has. Their conversation, though, is abruptly cut short when a guard opening the front door is violently brought down and another has his hand severed. The Yakuza boss demands to know who's there and screams for his guards, completely unaware that Shiba and Chihiro have already wiped them out. Chilling outside, Shiba calls back into the room, joking that the boss's men were slacking on the job. Gloating to the bums that he laid out, he casually informs them that Chihiro is the son of the master swordsmith, Kunishige Rokuhira. Chihiro steps into the building, declaring that he is only there to ask a question, while making it crystal clear that he won't allow any of them to touch a katana. Unmoved, the boss orders his men to slaughter the boy. Outside, Shiba explains that Kunishige had learned to infuse his swords with sorcery. These enchanted blades were completely unique, possessing terrifying supernatural powers. Inside, Chihiro draws his sword and calls its name, N10. Two goldfish manifest from the blade, one pitch black and the other tri-coloured, identical to the fish Chihiro and his father had kept years earlier. N10 was the final blade forged by his father, the very weapon Kunishige sacrificed his life to create and protect. The black goldfish adheres to the steel as Chihiro calls out Kudo, coating N10 in a jet black aura. With a single flying slash, Chihiro effortlessly bisects the line of Yakuza charging at him. Leaping up into the air, he delivers a series of decisive strikes, violating the crowd below him. Landing inside of the falling crowd of pathetic Yakuza, Chihiro finally activates Nishiki, off-screening them all in an instant. Shiba then casually enters the building, now littered with bloody corpses, just as Chihiro begins interrogating the terrified Korogumi boss about the Hishaku, the sorcerer group backing them. Rolling past them all, Shiba walks over to the prisoner and cuts his bindings. Panicking, the Yakuza boss stammers that the Hishaku are complete monsters, calling Chihiro insane for even trying to challenge them. Chihiro remains entirely unfazed. To him, their monstrous nature is meaningless. He is fully prepared to cut them down all the same. A few moments later, Shiba unties the bound hands of the victim, who warmly expresses his gratitude. Meanwhile, Chihiro questions the Yakuza boss about the Hishaku, with Shiba joining Chihiro's side and sternly cautioning the boss to listen carefully. Chihiro consolidates what little they know thus far. The group's activity first emerged 4 years ago, and rumors suggested they were a small, secretive group of elite sorcerers. Off to the side, Shiba begins guiding the ex-hostage towards the exit. Just as the boss opens his mouth to respond, his face suddenly distorts, his eyes sliding upward, while the rest of his features pull violently downward. Within seconds, his head violently explodes, giving birth to massive tree branches that rapidly burst forth and fill the entire room. Drawing N10, Chihiro fends off an incoming branch. As more vines surge towards the ex-hostage, Shiba grabs the young man and teleports them out of the warehouse using sorcery. Shocked by the sudden escape, the ex-hostage learns that Shiba is a sorcerer, though the sudden spatial jump quickly leaves the young man feeling nauseous. Shiba then teleports back inside to check on Chihiro, finding him completely unharmed. Chihiro immediately asks about the former captive, relieved to hear that he is safe, before noting that the tree branches erupted the exact moment the Yakuza boss tried to divulge information about the Hishaku. Shiba surmises that the group had likely placed a curse within his body, the unmistakable work of a high-level sorcerer. The two decide to head back to Tokyo. As they step outside of the warehouse, Chihiro stumbles, forcing Shiba to catch and support him, noting that he used up a massive amount of energy that day. Internally, Shiba reflects on how Chihiro had zero combat experience just 3 years ago. He acknowledges how remarkably far the boy has come, even if he has yet to truly master N10's full potential. In the past, the Rokuhira residence was shielded by a protective barrier designed to alert Shiba to any intrusion. On that tragic day 3 years ago, Shiba was alerted by it and rushed to the forge only to find the property reduced to a burning ruin. Sitting in the center of the ashes was Chihiro, completely vacant next to Kunishige's lifeless body. Horrified, Shiba approached the boy, relieved at first to even find him alive. In a state of pure shock, Chihiro recounted how 3 hostile sorcerers had suddenly invaded. The last thing he saw before losing consciousness was his father lying in a pool of blood, while he himself remained trapped inside of the burning home. When Chihiro finally awoke, all 6 enchanted blades his father had forged during the Sete War and securely locked away in the workshop cellar had been stolen. Despite the unspeakable tragedy, Chiba was simply thankful that Chihiro had survived his injuries. Sometime before that attack, Kunishige had introduced Chihiro to the 6 enchanted blades, explaining that each of them possessed unique, terrifying abilities. Chihiro had commented that those were the kinds of katanas he wished to craft one day. However, Kunishige gently emphasized that enchanted blades weren't necessarily the right path, encouraging Chihiro to view the world through his own lens and ponder what kind of katana the world truly needed and why, a question Kunishige himself wrestled with every day. Smiling, Kunishige told his son that they would try and figure that answer out together. Chihiro agreed, though he lightheartedly teased his father that he should wear a more serious shirt if he wanted to deliver such serious advice. Now, Kunishige lay dead on the ground, covered in mortal wounds. Weeping over his father's body, Chihiro questioned who could do such a thing and whether they understood how much love his father put into his craft. Surrounded by destruction, Chihiro wept hysterically, asking why this had to happen. Chiba expressed deep regret for not arriving sooner, wondering how the attackers could have possibly located the hidden residence. Fueled by righteous fury, Chihiro declared that those responsible needed to answer for what they had done, vowing to track them down and cut them all to pieces. The katana Chihiro now wields, Enten, is the final blade Kunishige spent years perfecting after the war, the very weapon he sacrificed his life to protect. In the present, Chihiro reflects on how there hasn't been a single reliable lead regarding the Hishaku since his father's murder. Gazing out of the window at the Tokyo skyline, Chihiro is haunted by the unsettling thought that someone is currently using his father's legacy for evil. He is more determined than ever to find the Hishaku and retrieve the stolen enchanted blades as quickly as possible. Unsheathing Enten slightly, 3 small ethereal goldfish float gently around the blade. Shiba then walks into the room and breaks the news. They arrived in Tokyo at the perfect time. There has been a confirmed sighting of one of the enchanted blades. Without hesitating for a single second, Chihiro states that they are leaving immediately. To an unseen newcomer in Tokyo, a random barmaid explains that while Japan's primary system of protection historically revolved around the katana, the leaders of the Yakuza gangs and massive corporations often seek superior self-defense options, sorcerers. With over 1,000 sorcerers operating within Tokyo, this establishment, Cafe Haru Haru, serves as a hub to connect these sorcerers with clients looking to hire their services. Displayed in her cafe is a poster inquiring about the information on the Hishaku, a request placed by one of her regular customers. 3 years ago, that very regular, Shiba, first visited Cafe Haru Haru. He now initially pitched several potential jobs, but Shiba rejected them all, revealing he had come for a much more specific purpose. He brought up the murder of Kunishige Rokuhira, and he now confirmed that a group calling themselves the Hishaku had claimed responsibility for Kunishige's death and the theft of his enchanted blades. Chihiro then walked into the cafe, his face freshly scarred and his expression cold. After hearing Chihiro and Shiba's history with the master swordsmith, he now agreed to help them, though no significant leads surfaced for years. That was until one day when a disheveled little girl named Cha wandered into the cafe. In the present day, Shiba and Chihiro arrive at Cafe Haru Haru. Shiba loudly greets her now, prompting her to shush him sternly before greeting Chihiro much more warmly. Chihiro asks if he now has located the person who claims to have seen an enchanted blade, and he now confirms she is sleeping in the back room. The three head to the back and find Cha asleep, with he now noting that the child had collapsed from exhaustion immediately upon arriving. He now explains that the child had come in asking to hire a sorcerer for protection against someone who was hunting her down. When he now asked if she had any money, Cha admitted that she didn't. When asked who was chasing her, the girl claimed her pursuer possessed the most strongest sword, leading her now to suspect she might be referring to an enchanted blade. Listening in, both Shiba and Chihiro react with skepticism, with Shiba suspecting the child is simply making up stories. Suddenly, Cha begins muttering words like hippos and cell division in her sleep before abruptly snapping awake, prompting Shiba to guess she was having a nightmare. Noticing Shiba and Chihiro, Cha asks if these are the two sorcerers who will protect her. Shiba decides to establish some basic facts first, asking Cha why she is being chased, but the child stubbornly refuses to answer. Convinced that she is lying, Shiba urges her to just go home, but Cha shakes her head and reveals she doesn't have one. Shiba's expression turns somber as he asks her about her parents, to which Cha shakes her head again, visibly distraught. Shiba suggests taking her to an orphanage, but Chihiro notices her unkempt state and asks when it was she last ate. Her stomach loudly rumbles on cue, prompting him to ask if she was hungry. Cha excitedly replies that she wants tempura soba, and shortly after, Shiba drives the duo to a local soba shop. While standing outside smoking, Shiba reflects on how Chihiro is naturally good at looking after others, a trait honed by years of taking care of his eccentric father. Meanwhile, inside of the restaurant, a waiter serves tempura soba to Cha and cold soba to Chihiro. Before eating, Cha introduces herself to Chihiro, who introduces himself in return. Cha obviously digs into the food, a bright smile spreading across her face at the taste of the warm food. Chihiro mentions that once they finish eating here, he plans to take her to an orphanage. Cha is obviously caught off guard by this, having assumed that going out for soba meant they had agreed to protect her. Chihiro reiterates Shiba's warning that the cafe isn't a playground for children, though Cha insists she is being completely serious. When Chihiro asks her about the people hunting her, Cha hesitates. Assuming that she has nothing real to say then, Chihiro starts to drop the idea, but Cha snaps back that she simply doesn't want to tell him. As they continue eating, a slender man enters the restaurant and walks past the duo as they talk. Changing his approach, Chihiro asks about the supposedly stronger sword Cha mentioned earlier. Between mouthfuls of noodles, Cha reveals that clouds pour out from the blade, a detail so specific that it instantly catches Chihiro's attention. After confirming Cha isn't joking, Chihiro asks if her pursuer has a flame-like symbol on the back of his hand, but Cha replies that she didn't see one. Mid-conversation, the nearby waiter shouts in frustration at the random man who refuses to order anything. Unfazed, Chihiro asks Cha if only the sword wielder is chasing her, to which Cha responds that he has several henchmen. Directly behind Chihiro, the man rages out, snaps a pair of wooden chopsticks in half, and violently plunges them into the waiter's neck. He casually remarks that he has finally found Cha. Of course, it's the random slender man looking dude, though finding her with a bodyguard is an inconvenient surprise. Chihiro springs to his feet just as the man calls out invincible, summoning a Daruma doll right next to Chihiro's left side. The doll instantly detonates, sending our boy crashing through the restaurant wall and tumbling onto the street outside. As panicked civilians scatter, Chihiro picks himself up, realizing that Cha was telling the truth all along about being hunted and seen in an enchanted blade. Furthermore, this attacker must be working directly for the blade's wielder. Though Chihiro briefly wonders why an enchanted blade wielder would be hunting a child like Cha, he sets the thought aside. He calls out to Cha inside of the wreckage, apologizing for ever doubting her. The slender man wannabe emerges from the destroyed storefront, holding Cha captive with a belt he fastened to her wrist. Simultaneously, more Daruma dolls begin bubbling out from his skin. Despite the chaos unfolding in the street, Shiba is fast asleep in a nearby parked car. Chihiro activates N10 and quickly formulates a plan. His top priority is rescuing Cha before determining if this dude has any ties to the enchanted blade she mentioned. The man voices that he was only sent there to retrieve Cha and is done with him. Chihiro immediately calls upon Kuro, producing a small black goldfish that manifests as a narrow flying slash, precisely severing the belt binding Cha. Recognizing the residual energy, the enemy realizes the slash was formed from pure spirit energy. Chihiro urgently calls out for Shiba, who teleports in to catch Cha and deposits her safely inside of his car before the Daruma dude can even react. Sitting safely in the car, Shiba internally realizes Cha was telling the truth all along, and is surprised to see she hasn't gotten sick from the sudden spatial jump. Cha asks if Shiba was using sorcery, and when he confirms it, she eagerly expresses her desire to learn sorcery as well. Shiba explains that anyone can harness sorcery given enough time and effort, as it is powered by spirit energy, a force comparable to one's life force that exists within everyone. Furious that Cha has slipped through his fingers, the enemy sorcerer demands that Chihiro hand her over. He flatly refuses though, stating he has his own goals and readies another Kuro. A massive black goldfish manifests behind him, leaving the dude completely astonished. From inside of the car, Cha asks about the spectral fish. Shiba explains that this is a unique property of the enchanted blades. They amplify a wielder's spirit energy to such an extreme degree that it cannot be contained within a human body, manifesting instead as physical shapes taking on the form of goldfish in N10's case. These spirit manifestations far surpass anything individual sorcerers are capable of producing on their own. Chihiro then releases the prepared Kuro, forcing his foe to duck beneath the sweeping flying slash. Standing back up, he notes in awe that while ordinary sorcerers consume spirit energy as a resource to power supernatural effects, N10 attacks using raw spirit energy itself. Shocked, he voices that he is stoked to learn of another enchanted blade. Hearing this, Chihiro realizes that this dude has personally encountered one before, a fact the sorcerer quickly confirms, explaining he bore witness to an enchanted blade's distinct spirit energy reaction. Surprised to see another now, he relishes the opportunity to test his strength against one in combat. Between dodging flying slashes and launching explosive Daruma dolls, Chihiro tries to investigate the sorcerer, but the man snaps back that Chihiro should defeat him before asking questions. Privately, the Daruma dude finds the Enchanted Blade's power anticlimactic compared to its legendary reputation for ending the war, dismissing it as no different from ordinary sorcery. Sensing that Char is still nearby as well, he shouts out to her, cruelly warning that whenever she seeks help, more people will die trying to protect her, just like her mother did. Hearing this, Char is terrified by his words, especially as the explosions draw perilously close to Chihiro. Shiba gently pats her on the head and reassures her. Unaware of this, the Daruma dude continues yelling, declaring that Chihiro's death will serve as a stark reminder of her mother's pointless demise. As several Daruma dolls detonate around Chihiro, Char's anxiety spikes, flooding her mind with traumatic memories of her mother's death. However, Chihiro emerges completely unscathed from the blast by calling upon Aka. A large red goldfish appears, absorbing the force of the oncoming explosion. Chihiro coldly informs the man that they can save the questions for later, leaving the sorcerer stunned to learn that Enten possesses multiple abilities. While mid-air, Chihiro fires off another Kuro that the Daruma dude barely manages to evade. Seeing Chihiro go to ready a second Kuro, the Daruma dude unleashes a barrage of explosive Daruma at Chihiro's feet, forcing him into the air to dodge the blast. The Daruma sorcerer swiftly maneuvers behind him and snares him in ropes and readies a Daruma point blank. Remaining completely composed, Chihiro points Enten backwards and calls out Aka, invincible. He expels the absorbed explosion directly into his opponent's face, coating him in a thick layer of fire. The Daruma that he had just readied then detonates in his face, sending the sorcerer crashing violently into the ground. Chihiro then lands on the ground gracefully with his limbs freed and sheaths Enten as Shiba drives the car up to him. Char praises Chihiro's skills and declares that he is worthy of protecting her. Chihiro quickly reminds her that she has no money, but adds that hunting her pursuers directly aligns with his ultimate goal, therefore he will protect her out of mutual interest. Off to the side, Shiba smiles while Char enthusiastically agrees that having common interests is excellent. Chihiro then walks over to the sorcerer's defeated body and drags him up against a nearby wall. Looking down at the battered sorcerer, he demands to know why they are targeting Char and the location of the enchanted blade, known as Cloud Gouger. Back at the cafe now, he now gives Char an oversized jacket to wear, commenting that it looks surprisingly good on her. Turning to Chihiro, he now expresses her relief that her intel turned out to be accurate, which Chihiro genuinely thanks her for. He now wonders aloud why sorcerers are hunting Char, a question Chihiro is equally curious about. Suddenly, Char collapses to the floor, stomach growling. Having barely eaten any of her soba earlier, she is still starving. Since there is no food left in the cafe, which is actually crazy just to think about, Chihiro offers to go out and buy her something, leaving her in Hanao's capable care. While driving, Chihiro's left hand begins to tremble. His thoughts turn to Shiba's concern over his exhausted state following the chaos of the last 2 days. Shiba had taken full charge of interrogating Old Cylinder Head, promising to update Chihiro on whatever he uncovered, while Chihiro drove back to the cafe with Char. His thoughts are abruptly cut short though by a loud sneeze from the back seat. Shocked to find Char behind him, Chihiro immediately calls Hanao to ask why the child is in the car. Hanao explains that Char snuck in while Chihiro was using the bathroom, claiming she needed to use some fresh air. Hanao rationalizes Char's escape by arguing that she is safer by Chihiro's side, rather than at a cafe where enemy sorcerers could ambush her at any moment. Chihiro then ends the call and Char notices his somber expression, asking what's wrong. Chihiro replies that he is worried about her safety, criticizing her for taking unnecessary risks just for some fresh air. Char responds that she has been locked inside for a long time, adding confidently that Chihiro would be able to protect her from any attackers anyway. Chihiro catches her phrasing and asks what she meant by inside, prompting Char to reveal that she had been held captive. When Chihiro asks why, Char falls silent and refuses to answer. Chihiro points out that if he's going to risk his life protecting her, he deserves to know the truth. However, seeing her visible distress and remembering the sorcerer's taunts about her mother dying for her, Chihiro decides to drop the subject. Changing the topic, he asks what she wants to eat, and she eagerly asks for a sandwich. Which, I can't lie, sandwich kinda sounds good right now. Meanwhile, inside an abandoned warehouse, Shiba pulls up a chair directly across from the sorcerer, sits down, and demands to know the location of the enchanted blade. The man tries to play dumb with evasive answers. Unmoved, Shiba places his foot atop the Daruma dudes and orders him to cut the act. When the sorcerer simply laughs in response, Shiba stomps down with devastating force, shattering the concrete floor beneath them and violently crushing the man's foot. Agonized, the enemy sorcerer desperately warns Shiba that if he speaks, they are both dead men. he urges Shiba and Chihiro to hand over Cha and walk away while they still can, boasting that the power behind this organization is far greater than Shiba could ever fathom. Elsewhere, Chihiro and Cha pull up to a shop named Babylonia, where Chihiro buys her a sandwich. Cha happily gushes over how delicious it is. Chihiro asks if they should head back, but Cha insists on stopping at a parlor named Tanda for ice cream, claiming that every proper meal needs a sweet finish. Chihiro again suggests returning to the cafe, but Cha drags him to yet another shop named Bloom, this time picking up a drink to wash everything down, much to Chihiro's sheer belief. Meanwhile, in a lavish room with floor-to-ceiling glass windows overlooking Tokyo, some tatted-up demon relaxes in a deep bathtub. Hanging from the rafters directly above him is a battered man whose eyes have been gouged out. The man dryly thanks the captive for his intel, mocking the Daruma-wielding moron for his total failure and lack of subtlety. He then questions how the tied-up scout had the audacity to merely watch the fight instead of stepping in to capture Cha. Still, he admits he is deeply fascinated by the reports of a 7th enchanted blade. He'd never heard of a goldfish-themed blade among the original 6 and wondered how a seemingly unknown kid came to possess it. Turning to a few fodder doormen, he demands more information, but they report that nothing has been found. Losing patience, the man decides on a far more aggressive approach, ordering his men to open the child's cage. Having finally eaten her fill in the car, Cha opens up to our boy, revealing that she had been trapped in a dark place for a very long time, forced to eat nothing but tasteless mush. Recalling how her mother always told her to live a happy life, Cha softly admits that today she felt truly happy. As Cha prepares to say more, Chihiro's phone then rings. Stopping at a red light, Chihiro picks up the call from Shiba and asks if there are any updates from the interrogation. Shiba discloses that their next target is Genichi Sojo, a notorious weapons dealer holding immense influence over Japan's criminal underworld. Sojo is the Cylinder Head's boss, Cha's captor, and the current wielder of the enchanted blade, Cloud Gouger. As the traffic light turns green, Cha notices something bizarre. The drivers and the surrounding cars all share the exact same identical face. Over the phone, Shiba notes that based on Cylinder's confession and Sojo's possession of Cloud Gouger, there is almost certainly a direct connection between Sojo and the Hishaku. Shiba adds that once they regroup at the cafe, he will have Hinao gather more intel on Sojo. Chihiro then goes to step on the gas pedal to drive forward, but the concrete beneath the tires suddenly transforms into a thick, bubbling sludge. Confused, Chihiro watches as the traffic light turns back to red. The earth surrounding the intersection morphs into a swirling vortex before an amalgamation made entirely of cloned individuals sharing the same identical face starts twisting its way up from its center. Remaining deadpan, Chihiro calmly tells Shiba that he will call him back shortly and hangs up the phone. Chihiro calmly grips N10, noting how bold these attackers are, wondering how they could even pinpoint Cha's location when she hadn't even stepped out of the car. Suddenly, the figures at the intersection, along with the drivers in nearby vehicles, dissolve into thick dirt. Converging on the car, the mud smashes through the windows and completely engulfs the vehicle. Chihiro grabs Cha, slashes through both the roof and the suffocating mass of earth, and leaps up onto a nearby road sign for safety. The clone sorcerer comments on the enchanted blade in Chihiro's hand. Seeing Chihiro's surprise, the sorcerer reveals that Genichi Sojo recently broadcast a massive bounty across the city, offering to pay any price for Cha and Chihiro's enchanted blade. Inside Cafe Haruharu, Hinao sees the bounty alert and panics, immediately realizing that if a criminal like Titan Sojo is offering an unlimited payout, the entire Tokyo underworld will be out for blood. She desperately dials Chihiro, but he is in no position to answer. Telling Cha to hold on tight, Chihiro launches himself into the air. Below, the clone sorcerer reshapes the dirt covering the car into an army of corpses, sending them off in hot pursuit. Chihiro darts into a tight alley before spinning around to face his pursuers. With a swift Kuro, he slashes the front line, though the cut clones simply collapse back into harmless piles of dirt. Chihiro observes the technique, deducing that the clone sorcerer's magic allows him to manipulate Earth and sculpt it into human-like proxies. The clone sorcerer notes that he witnessed the terrifying power of enchanted blades during the Sete War, expressing relief that not every blade seems that devastating. He considers the possibility that Chihiro is simply inexperienced, but dismisses the thought as he orders his army to swarm the alley. Chihiro's hand trembles slightly as he slashes through the proxies to keep them from grabbing Cha, determined to seek out and kill the original wielder. Suddenly, a second enemy sorcerer appears out of nowhere amid the mob, reaching his hand towards Chihiro's face. Our boy's vision then abruptly cuts to a warm memory of a meal shared with his father, which violently flashes into the traumatic sight of him cradling Kunishige's bloodied, lifeless body. Shaken to his core, Chihiro snaps back to reality on all fours, sweat dripping down his face as he desperately asks how much time has passed. The sorcerer mocks him, revealing that only 4 seconds have elapsed, though it undoubtedly felt like an eternity to him. He sneers at Chihiro's pathetic attempt to protect Char. They boast that their spell involves psychological induction by tracking brainwaves, allowing him to force anyone to relive their deepest, darkest traumas. Watching Char, the clone sorcerer muses that they have captured the last survivor of the Konagi clan, idly asking if they should eat her right here and right now. The trauma sorcerer hastily shuts the idea down, reminding him that they need the bounty money. He adds that the old rumors claiming eating a member of the Konagi clan granted immortality were proven to be complete nonsense. Surprised to learn that the clan was wiped out over a lie, the clone sorcerer wonders what Sojo could possibly want with a seemingly ordinary child. To demonstrate, the trauma sorcerer orders his ally to bring Char closer. Grabbing her left leg just below the knee, he violently snaps the bone. As the clone sorcerer watches in awe, the shattered bone instantly heals before their eyes. The trauma sorcerer explains that the Konagi clan possesses unique regenerative abilities, which Sojo undoubtedly plans to exploit. As the two discuss Sojo's dark motives, they note that Char won't know peace for a very long time. Cruelly telling Char to blame her own bloodline for her fate, the trauma sorcerer considers breaking another bone to test her limit, but remembers their secondary target. He steps over to retrieve Enten, while the clone sorcerer leans in to inspect Char's regeneration. Weakly, Chihiro demands he takes his paws off his blade, only for the sorcerer to mock him, claiming he does what he wants. Before he can react though, Chihiro unsheaths his wakizashi with his right hand, stands up and swipes upward in one fluid motion, cleanly severing the trauma sorcerer's right arm at the elbow. Flabbergasted that Chihiro can even move, the trauma sorcerer stares in horror. Chihiro gazes back with cold, dead eyes and tells the sorcerer that he didn't break him, he merely reminded him of the very trauma that fuels his hatred every single day. Summoning Nishiki, Chihiro, in the blink of an eye, decapitates the trauma sorcerer. Enhanced by Nishiki's blinding speed and physical boost, Chihiro blurs through the alleyway, slicing down every single dirt proxy in a fraction of a second. Desperate, the clone sorcerer grabs Char and goes to hold her up as a human shield. Unfazed, Chihiro delivers 2 lightning-fast slashes through the sorcerer's arms and decapitates him in the same motion, catching Char gently as she falls from his grip. Catching his breath, Chihiro remarks that her pursuers were targeting her because of her unique physical traits. He asks her if she kept quiet earlier out of the fear that he would exploit her as well, which Char quietly affirms. He then recalls how she was on the verge of opening up to him in the car, asking if it was because she had finally grown to trust him. Looking up, Char nods and says yes. Immediately after, her stomach grows loudly, having thrown up all of the food she ate earlier. Girl cannot get a meal down at all, it's actually crazy right now. Chihiro though pulls out his one remaining sandwich and hands it over to her, apologizing for everything she had to go through. Taking the sandwich with a sweet smile, Char replies that it's fine. Remembering the citywide bounty Sojo placed on them, Chihiro helps Char onto his back and stands up, prioritizing immediate escape as he walks out of the alley. Stepping into an intersection, Chihiro is immediately confronted by a dude wearing an Oni mask who wonders aloud how much Sojo will pay for their capture. To his right, another sorcerer begins chanting a spell, while to his left, a third sorcerer engorges his arms, causing them to emit thick smoke. Chihiro places a shaking hand on Enten's hilt as the Oni mask sorcerer rushes forward and the sorcerer with engorged arms leaps into the air. Before Chihiro can unsheath Enten, some weird Where's Waldo wannabe suddenly appears behind him and tells him to put the blade away. Chihiro obeys just as the dude then leaps into the air, knocking the airborne sorcerer away with a powerful kick. The Oni mask sorcerer hesitates, recognizing that this bloke relied purely on physical speed rather than sorcery. The chanting sorcerer turns toward the new guy, but he quickly extends his hand out, causing fine cuts to slice across his own fingers. Landing on the ground, he calmly remarks on the nature of the spell, while the Oni mask sorcerer recognizes the badge on his coat. With a bloody hand, Waldo hits Demon Time, blurs towards the panicking spellcaster, and drops him with a single punch. He turns his attention to the Oni mask sorcerer as a bolt of electricity crackles between his left fingertips. The Oni mask sorcerer promptly raises his hands in surrender, declaring that he had no idea this guy's organization was involved and would prefer not to get caught in the crossfire. Knowing that he's got to be a colonel or higher due to his plain clothes and badge, the Oni mask sorcerer teleports away, refusing to oppose the state. The friendly sorcerer greets Chihiro, who returns the greeting in kind. Turns out this guy's called Azami. He mentions that while handling Sojo's bounty isn't his official assignment, he can still give them a ride. As Chihiro asks if his hand is alright, Char asks who the newcomer is. Chihiro explains that Azami works for the Kamunabi, a government-affiliated organization of elite sorcerers tasked with handling national threats rather than private requests. The three arrive at Cafe Haruharu, where Azami greets Hanao and Shiba. Hanao asks if Izami has come to take Cha somewhere safe, which briefly startles the young girl, but he clarifies that while he wants to, the Kamonabe's primary directive hasn't changed since the war. Shiba expresses his disgust with the Kamonabe's cold refusal to intervene in individual lives, noting how relieved he is to have left the organization. Listening in, Cha excitedly plays with her oversized jacket, thrilled by the realization that she might actually be staying with Chihiro. At Shiba's prompting, Izami reveals that the Kamonabe's leadership wants to meet with Shiba to discuss Sojo's sudden interest in Cha and Chihiro, as well as to determine Shiba's true intentions. He explains that not all of the higher-ups know that Chihiro and Enten exist, only those who originally helped Kunishige go into hiding. Izami reminds Shiba that given the threat Enchanted Blades pose, he should be confiscating Enten immediately. He admits he has refrained from taking the sword or reporting them due to his personal history, but cautions that he cannot easily cover for them when Shiba and Chihiro act so recklessly in public, asking how Shiba let things spiral so far out of control this time. Shiba defends himself though, arguing that the situation has changed now that Chihiro is fully capable of fighting. Izami concedes that, despite having only 3 years of training, Chihiro's mastery over Enten demonstrates remarkable strength of both mind and body. Shiba then hints at an impending event that would have forced their hand regardless, asking Izami if he honestly expected them to remain hidden forever amidst escalating tensions. Noting that he gathered some intel of his own and guessing it is another reason the Kamonabe leaders want to see him, Shiba prompts Izami to reveal the news. Izami discloses to him the upcoming event, the Rakuzachi, the criminal underworld's largest black market auction held once a year, scheduled to take place in a month's time. The original enchanted blade, Shinuchi, is slated to be auctioned off, with Genichi Sojo listed as the seller. Elsewhere, Genichi Sojo provides a progress report to 2 members of the Hishaku seated before him, confirming that everything is proceeding strictly according to the plan. Back at Cafe Haruharu, Chihiro connects the dots. Sojo's possession of Cloud Gouger and his auctioning of Shinuchi are concrete proof of his alliance with the Hishaku. Izami explains that the Kamonabe have blacklisted Sojo for over a decade, but the weapons dealer has skillfully evaded them through sheer strength and cunning. He firmly warns Chihiro that Sojo is far beyond his current skill level. Receiving a phone notification, Izami informs Chihiro that his subordinates have successfully scrubbed Sojo's bounty. He reiterates with him that although Chihiro has grown strong, he isn't ready for this level of threat and should leave Sojo and the Rakuzachi to the Kamonabe. Chihiro verbally agrees with him, though both Izami and Shiba see right through this lie of his. Shiba lightheartedly jokes that if Izami truly wants to stop Chihiro, he might as well snag his sword now. Izami pauses for a moment to look at an old photo on his phone featuring himself, Shiba and Kunishige in their youth, before snapping it shut and putting it in his pocket. Turning towards the door, he notes that while the Hishaku maintained a low profile following Kunishige's murder, this sudden move represents a dangerous new level of boldness. Expressing his belief that the Hishaku are planning something massive with the Enchanted Blades over the coming weeks, Izami gives Chihiro a final warning. With the Rakuzachi only a month away, they must do everything in their power to prepare. On the morning after yesterday's chaos, Chihiro recalls how Shiba and Izami left late last night to plan their next move. Reflecting on Izami's blunt warning that Genichi Sojo was far out of his league, Chihiro's expression sours. However, his heavy thoughts are broken by the sound of Cha muttering a game of Shiratori to herself in her sleep. Stepping out of the cafe's back room, Chihiro finds Hanao cleaning up the front. After confirming to Hanao that Cha is still fast asleep, Chihiro sincerely thanks her for letting them stay at the cafe, to which Hanao warmly replies that she is glad to help. Just then, the chime above the door rings as someone opens it. The story then shifts to the inner thoughts of Narasaku Madoka, which is the name of the cylinder-head dude from just before. During his career as a mercenary sorcerer, he was known as Daruma after his signature explosive spellcraft. He had been a highly skilled operative who had never tasted defeat until he crossed paths with Chihiro. Following his brutal investigation, Shiba had advised Narasaku to give up sorcery and start a fresh, honest life. Though initially baffled by the suggestion, Narasaku remembered how his sister used to berate him for bringing shame upon their family name, leading locals to mock them as the Bomb Monster family. Seeing the genuine remorse in Narasaku's eyes during those memories, Shiba believed it wasn't too late for him to change his path. Realizing that Shiba had given him invaluable advice, Narasaku decided to abandon sorcery for good. He returned home, threw his sorcerer attire in the trash, and called his sister to break the news. Though still irritated and scolding him for thinking a simple apology could erase years of shame, his earnest plea to make amends step by step moved her heart. When she asked if he had called their mother yet, Narasaku mentioned he hadn't received an answer, which they assumed was due to the late hour. Narasaku resolved to apologize to her first thing in the morning, and his sister promised to pick him up. The next morning, brimming with newfound resolve, Norisaku stepped into her car and warmly thanked her for the support. Suddenly, Norisaku looked over to see his sister lying unconscious, blood gushing from a fatal wound. Glancing into a rearview mirror, he froze in horror. Genichi Sojo was sitting calmly in the back seat. Before Norisaku could react, Sojo thrust Cloud Gouger straight through the seat, impaling him. Distraught, Norisaku screamed that his sister had done nothing wrong. Coldly, Sojo replied that these deaths were merely the consequences of Norisaku's failure to complete his mission. Sojo's plural phrasing of this sent a wave of pure horror through Norisaku as he realized Sojo had already murdered his mother as well. Overwhelmed by grief and rage, Norisaku manifested a massive collection of Daruma bowls directly inside of his own body, intending to blow them both to pieces. However, before he could detonate them, Sojo flash froze him with Yui, Cloud Gouger's ice ability. Stepping casually out of the car, Sojo carelessly noted that Norisaku's sister was still breathing, adding that if a man chose a path in life, he should commit it until the very end. As Sojo then sheathed Cloud Gouger and deactivated Yui, Norisaku unfroze and the internal Daruma bombs detonated, violently incinerating the vehicle, himself, and his sister. Sometime prior, and this is hilariously dark, the trauma sorcerer dude had noted that his younger brother was rapidly improving his sorcery, as both of them shared the same mind-altering spellcraft. The day before, the trauma sorcerer had told his brother to watch closely as he proved that not even an enchanted blade wielder could withstand their own sorcery. Instead, the younger brother bore witness to his brother's swift execution. In the present, the younger brother meets with Sojo. Having tracked down Chihiro's location, he begs Sojo to kill him for him. Sojo agrees and decides to use the younger sorcerer as a quick warm-up. Unsheathing Cloud Gouger with his right hand, Sojo grabs the brother by the neck with his left hand. Desperate, the brother triggers his psychological sorcery on Sojo. A vision flashes in Sojo's mind of his younger self standing amidst a tranquil field of flowers beneath a harrowing sky filled with floating corpses. However, Sojo completely ignores his own trauma, dryly commenting on how interesting the sorcery is, before decapitating the brother on the spot. Moments later, Sojo arrives at Cafe Haru Haru, callously pushing people out of his way as he makes his way through the doorway. Before he can proceed, Chihiro halts him in his tracks and the two enchanted blades clash in a burst of violent sparks. Sojo remarks on Chihiro's impressive reaction speed before activating Cloud Gouger and calling out Mei. A devastating blast of lightning erupts, launching Chihiro straight through the cafe wall. The commotion actually wakes Chara in the back room, and recognizing Sojo's menacing presence, she is immediately overcome with terror. He now rushes into the room and urges Chara to hide, but the young girl is far more terrified for Chihiro's life. Having blasted Chihiro into the adjoining structure, Sojo calls out into the dust, asking if he's already dead. He explains that he came here to solely test his strength in a clash between enchanted blades and to verify the existence of a seventh sword. Unseen by Sojo during the blast, Chihiro walks back out from the destroyed wall completely unharmed, having used Arca to absorb the lightning attack. Looking at Sojo's blade, Chihiro asks if his blood-stained steel was used to strike down some sorcerers. Sojo indifferently replies that he doesn't give a shit. Hearing this, Chihiro coldly declares that, in that case, Sojo has no right to wield Cloud Gouger. Activating N10, black and tricolored goldfish manifest and swirl around Chihiro in a dense aura of spirit energy. Sojo grins maniacally in anticipation of the battle, screaming at Chihiro to bring it on as two massive cloud dragons coalesce around his body. Sometime before Chihiro's confrontation with Sojo, Azami and Shiba were sitting together in a car. Azami expressed his sheer shock at Sojo possessing Cloud Gouger, noting that Sojo's recent uncharacteristically bold move suggests he is deliberately baiting the Kaminabi, a confidence that makes sense given he wields an enchanted blade. He advises Shiba to keep Chihiro low profile regardless of his rapidly growing combat abilities, wanting to avoid a public battle between enchanted blades at all costs. Outside, the two notice an exhibit dedicated to Kunishige Rokuhira, commemorating the 18th anniversary of the Sete War that took place the previous week. Azami remarks how the children of the modern era view Kunishige as a legendary hero, but warns that the sight of his blades clashing in public would instantly shatter that heroic image. Back at Cafe Haru Haru, Chihiro and N10 stand off against Sojo and Cloud Gouger. Chihiro's mind is flooded with chaotic thoughts from the Hishaku and Shinichi to Char, but his primary focus instantly shifts to the stolen weapon right in front of his eyes. Internally, Sojo was impressed that Chihiro emerged virtually unscathed from the Mei lightning strike he unsheathed earlier, and asks how he has a mystic sword that he doesn't know anything about. Refusing to answer him, Chihiro wonders why Sojo was more focused on testing his blade than pursuing Char, before sprinting out of the cafe entrance. Sojo pursues him immediately, and the two begin leaping across Tokyo's rooftops. Sojo unleashes Yui, prompting Chihiro to counter with Kudo. Chihiro recalls that Cloud Gouger possesses 3 abilities, Mei, which was lightning, and Yui, which was ice, just as massive jagged shards erupt from a nearby rooftop at Sojo's command. Chihiro's flying slash cuts straight through the ice wall and sweeps towards Sojo, who takes note of the technique and parries it. Chihiro throws his wakizashi at Sojo as a distraction and dashes behind him, but Sojo blocks the follow-up strike and shoves Chihiro back. Sojo's raw physical strength, even from an awkward position, catches Chihiro off guard. Nevertheless, Chihiro takes solace in knowing that Hinao and Cha have successfully escaped. Currently, Chihiro is acutely aware of the massive gap in power between them. Sojo hasn't shown a single trace of fatigue, indicating he hasn't even used his full speed yet. Chihiro realizes his best option is to activate Nishiki, but due to his extreme exhaustion, he will only have one shot to use it and won't last long while it's active. Unexpectedly, Sojo voices his deep admiration for Rokuhira, praising the absolute perfection of the weapons he crafted. Eager to feel a closer connection to the legend, Sojo extensively researched Kunishige until he finally acquired Cloud Gouger, a dream come true. He then pressed Chihiro about his sword, demanding to know where this unrecognized 7th blade came from. When Chihiro refuses to answer, Sojo changes tactics, asking why Chihiro wields his sword in order to judge whether he is truly worthy of holding it. Reflecting on the lesson taught to him by his father, Chihiro responds that he fights to defeat evil and protect the weak. Sojo's expression turns to utter disgust. He declares that he is the only one who truly understood Kunishige, lamenting that history books insult the swordsmith by calling him a hero. Sojo asserts that there is only one reason to forge weapons, telling Chihiro that he understands nothing. A massive cloud dragon coalesces behind Sojo as he backflips off the roof, shouting that he will show Chihiro what Kunishige truly wanted. The enchanted blades are ultimate weapons of mass destruction, forged for the sole purpose of killing. Landing right in the middle of the crowd, Sojo charges Mei, the cloud dragon collapsing into a surging storm of lightning swirling around Cloud Gouger. Back in the car, Azami solemnly notes that if enchanted blades were to clash inside the city, civilian casualties would be inevitable, and Kunishige Rokuhira's heroic legacy would be irreparably ruined. Praised by Sojo as truly sublime, the power of Kunishige's craftsmanship surges as Sojo releases Mei, aiming to annihilate the surrounding civilians. Chihiro thrusts N10 forward, activating the red hue of Aka on the blade just before a deafening blast shakes the entire city. As the smoke clears, Sojo is stunned to see a massive crater blasted diagonally off to the side, pointing directly toward a heavily electrocuted charged Chihiro. Seeing that the civilians are completely unharmed and fleeing for safety, Sojo asks Chihiro in genuine confusion how he survived. Chihiro explains that he used himself as a lightning rod, releasing the absorbed Mei lightning he held inside Aka from the cafe attack to attract Sojo's incoming lightning strike away from the crowd. Sojo contemplates whether Chihiro's blade can also manipulate lightning, realizing that Chihiro intentionally took the full brunt of the blast to shield the crowd, suffering catastrophic damage in the process. Mocking Chihiro's foolish heroism, Sojo tries to launch another Mei. A cloud dragon begins to form, but it instantly fizzles out and vanishes. Chihiro reveals that after Cloud Gouger releases a max output Mei, it requires a 10 to 20 second cooldown to recharge. Coldly glaring at his foe, he asserts that Sojo is the one who truly understands nothing. Agitated, Sojo retorts that Chihiro's tough talk means nothing when his body is visibly breaking down. Chihiro calculates that a 10 to 20 second window is enough time for the remaining civilians to clear the area, especially with the Kamonabi fast approaching. However, before the authorities arrive, and fueled by righteous fury against Sojo's sick perversions of his father's ideals, Chihiro resolves to finish Sojo himself and activates Nishiki. It is revealed that Nishiki augments every single one of Chihiro's strikes with high-density spirit energy. Chihiro's body racks with intense pain as he struggles to just stay upright, a weakness Sojo immediately notices. Looking down on him, Sojo internally wonders how Chihiro is even still conscious, attributing it to his own mere week of experience with Cloud Gouger. Seeking to buy time for Cloud Gouger's cooldown, Sojo questions Chihiro's motives, deeming his altruistic desire to protect Cha, who is currently fleeing down an alleyway with Hinao, completely unfitting for the wielder of Kunishige's weapons of mass destruction. The mere mention of his father sends Chihiro into a rage, screaming for Sojo to stop talking about his father. Chihiro catches Sojo off guard and rushes in to attack. Chihiro's opening strike knocks Cloud Gouger into the air before he blurs around his opponent. Taking note of Chihiro's sudden boost in speed and power, Sojo catches Cloud Gouger and calls Yui, summoning sharp spikes of ice around himself to force Chihiro down a predictable path. Chihiro attempts an ambush from behind, but Sojo reads the movement and counters with a strike of his own. As both swords slice towards each other's heads, both fighters leap back at the last second. Disgruntled that Sojo was able to read and counter his attack, Chihiro realizes that he only has enough strength left for one final serious push. Randomly though, he notices a nearby car filled with Yakuza and Char's leg visible through the window. Sojo half-heartedly chastises his men for being so damn obvious. Chihiro though is left aghast, realizing that his intense fixation on Cloud Gouger blinded him to the fact that Sojo brought backup specifically to recapture Char. After a split second of hesitation, Chihiro breaks away and dashes towards the fleeing vehicle just as Sojo realizes Mei's cooldown has ended. Sojo immediately chants Mei, and the Cloud Dragon beside him condenses into a bolt of lightning aimed directly at Chihiro's back. Before it can strike, a massive stone wall erupts from the earth to block the path, summoned by a new sorcerer woman. Dropping in, the Kamunabi's elite anti-Cloud Gouger special forces arrives on the scene. Simultaneously, Izami and Shiba land on a nearby rooftop. Sojo calculates that while he could easily handle the special forces on his own, fighting them alongside Izami and Shiba would prove too dangerous. Now clad in his official Kamunabi uniform, Izami orders the squad to stand by, while Shiba prepares to teleport in and assist Chihiro. Izami stops Shiba though, warning that if Shiba moves, Sojo will break the stalemate and ignite a full-scale battle. Shiba offers to fight Sojo himself instead, but Izami halts him again, citing the massive collateral damage an enchanted blade would cause to the surrounding city. Before Shiba can teleport regardless, Sojo calls out Ko. A dense fog rolls over the area, completely obscuring everyone's vision and allowing Sojo to slip away unnoticed. And it was obviously like the third ability of his blade that never really got mentioned when Chihiro was going over them earlier. Meanwhile, Chihiro sprints to intercept the Yakuza vehicle carrying Char. Leaping into the moving car, he swiftly decapitates two of Sojo's men. However, upon reaching the back seat, he finds only Char's severed leg lying on the floorboards. Grabbing the surviving driver, Chihiro dives out of the car right before it crashes and explodes behind him. Chihiro violently interrogates the man, who reveals through laughter that Sojo ordered them to sever Char's leg to trick and confuse Chihiro. When he demands to know what happened to Hinao, the man only cackles in response. Nearby, Hinao lies collapsed and unconscious in a dark alleyway. Chihiro then executes the man as the vehicle fire blazes behind them. Teetering on the edge of total collapse, Chihiro sways, his energy completely spent. Before he can hit the pavement, Shiba teleports in and catches him. When Chihiro asks what happened to Sojo, Shiba reveals that the villain escaped under the cover of Ko. One bitter realization echoes through Chihiro's mind. The hand holding his father's sword was completely worthless when it mattered most. Elsewhere, a separate car carrying two of Sojo's men and a sobbing Char speeds through the city. The two goons look at Char's severed leg in shock, astonished at how rapidly her body is already regenerating the missing limbs. Suddenly, Sojo lands heavily on the roof and slides into the front passenger seat through the window. His men eagerly ask if he has already mastered Cloud Gouger. Sojo admits that he hasn't, staring down at his throbbing, shaking right hand before stating he needs to deepen his understanding of the sword. With Char back in his clutches now, Sojo plans to resume his ultimate goal of surpassing Kunishige Rokuhira. When his men ask if he intends to forget about the 7th enchanted blade, Sojo replies that he will not, especially now that he knows Chihiro is Kunishige's son. Back on the ruined street, battered, exhausted, and pushed to his absolute limits, Chihiro burns with a single unyielding resolve. I will cut Sojo down. A little while later, Chihiro stirs awake in a hospital room covered head to toe in heavy bandages. Shiba and Izami enter, with Izami explaining that they chose to place Chihiro in a public hospital. Though a specialized Kamunabi facility could offer superior medical care, they wanted to keep Chihiro's lineage out of official records, knowing several higher-ranking Kamunabi members harbor deep hostility towards Kunishige Rokuhira. Chihiro immediately asks about the two girls, and Shiba reassures him that he now is recovering well enough to eat Shiba's apples, even if she complains about them. As for Char, Shiba assures him that she's almost certainly still alive. He goes on to elaborate Sojo's true motives, which he uncovered while interrogating Narasaku Madoka. Sojo is in possession of Datanseki, an extremely rare metal that Chihiro instantly recognizes as the core component used to forge enchanted blades. Inside of Sojo's hidden laboratory, Sojo explains to his mohawked henchman that Datanseki is a volatile ore discovered during the Sete War with only 250 kilograms known to exist in the entire world. He highlights its deadly property. Any spirit energy channeled into it is amplified exponentially to a degree far beyond what any human body can naturally contain. Rather than manifesting outward as a spell, raw spirit energy channeled through unrefined Datanseki surges back into the wielder's body, causing them to promptly explode from spirit energy overload. However, Kunishige Rokuhira was the sole individual in human history capable of stabilizing Datanseki and making it safely usable. A nearby researcher interrupts to inform Sojo that preparations for the day's experiments are complete, and Sojo orders today's quota of cells to be added to a mixture. Back in the hospital, Chihiro is confused as to how Sojo could possibly utilize Datanseki if his father was the only one who knew how to stabilize it. Shiba solemnly reveals Sojo's breakthrough theory. He believes the cells of the Konagi clan hold the secret key to stabilizing Datanseki. His goal was to combine Datanseki with Char's unique flesh to forge a brand new weapon. Inside a dingy cell in Sojo's laboratory, Char sits staring with dead, hollow eyes as a tray of slop is served as her food. Moments later, researchers drag her onto an operating table. As Sojo watches, the scientists identify the precise anatomical features they require and surgically harvest several of Char's internal organs. Which is insanely messed up, man. Back at the hospital, as the horrifying reality of what Sojo is doing to Char sets in, Chihiro's eyes widen in sheer horror. With the harvested organs placed in containment, Sojo orders Char to be thrown back into her cage before directing his team to inject her cells into the fluid vat containing the Datanseki fragment. One of the goons suggests fattening Char up so they have more flesh to harvest later on, but Sojo dismisses the idea, citing the carving of regenerating flesh as the far more efficient approach. Also, I got a sandwich. Overwhelmed by his bitter frustration at his failure to protect Char, Chihiro's expression crumbles into helpless fury as his right hand grips the bed sheets. Realizing he doesn't have his weapon, Chihiro desperately asks where Enten is. Azami assures him that the blade is safe. Shiba apologizes to him sincerely for underestimating Sojo's power and letting him escape. Azami shifts the conversation to the Kamunabi, explaining that they have assembled an elite squad specifically designed to counter Sojo, the anti-Cloud Gouger special forces. He then asks Chihiro to come and meet with them so they can devise a joint strategy to neutralize Cloud Gouger. Urging Chihiro to put his trust in him, Azami is supported by Shiba, who confirms that the squad answers directly to Azami and is entirely reliable. Hearing this, Chihiro agrees to the meeting. Moments later, and of course because he really couldn't go anywhere, the anti-Cloud Gouger special forces enter the room. The masked dude immediately shouts at the top of his lungs just to listen to his own echo, much to the woman's amusement. Just based off his look, I feel like this dude has some kind of like Sonic type ability, but I could be completely wrong. Glasses barks at the squad to shut up, with the Feitan clone echoing the command at a calmer volume, while the guy who kinda looks like Yuji mixed in with Inumaki clicks his tongue in obvious annoyance at Chihiro. Glasses, who I think is the squad member here, obviously because he's the one in charge, pulls up a chair and explains that they have researched the location Norisaku gave Shiba, but found it abandoned. With their search back at square one, they need Chihiro's first-hand combat data to form a countermeasure against Sojo. Chihiro agrees to cooperate with them on one condition: he must be included in the strike operation. I'ma just call these guys by the names that I made up before till they're all introduced or whatever, but Yuji immediately dismisses the idea, assuming Chihiro expects special treatment simply because of his famous father. Feitan dryly excuses his boy's hostility, noting that he always acts like a jerk when he meets young talented sorcerers. He then turns to their boss and points out that Chihiro managed to completely prevent civilian casualties during Sojo's city attack, making him a major asset. The lovely lady, given off Shinobu vibes, is stunned by this, asking how he managed to shield everyone from such a widespread lightning assault. Chihiro explains that he used Enten to draw all of the lightning into his body. His selflessness earns instant admiration from the masked guy, though Chihiro humbly downplays his actions, attributing his survival to Sojo's inexperience with Cloud Gouger. Shiba speaks up to highlight the reality of Chihiro's condition, pointing to his severe injuries, particularly to his dominant left arm, estimating that he won't be in fighting shape for at least a month. Internally, Glasses is shocked that Chihiro was able to fight Sojo at all in such a state. Feitan notes that their unit had already begun hunting for Sojo's base when Chihiro collapsed 5 days ago. Shocked to learn that nearly a week had slipped by, Chihiro is consumed by panic over what Char is enduring and insists that he cannot sit this mission out. Glasses firmly reminds him that the Kamunabi's sole objective is to eliminate Sojo, not to execute a rescue mission for Char. However, recognizing Chihiro's headstrong nature and knowing that he would recklessly charge in on his own anyway, he proposes a compromise. While the anti-Cloud Gouger special forces engage Sojo directly, Chihiro can use this distraction to covertly slip in and rescue Char. Glasses considers it a pretty practical decision given Chihiro's physical limitations. Finally, he then asks him if he accepts the arrangement. Though every single fibre of Chihiro's being burns to crush Sojo himself, a sharp throb of agony from his left hand serves as a brutal reminder of his shattered body. Thinking of Char trapped in that horrifying lab, Chihiro swallows his pride and agrees to the plan. Sometime afterward, Glasses confirms to Chihiro that they have finalized their operational strategy. He tells him that all they need now is intelligence on Sojo's location, with Shinobu adding that it shouldn't take too long to find him. He then promises that they will contact him the moment it's time to move. 49 hours after Chihiro woke up in the hospital, Shiba checks in on him. Chihiro notes that while his body aches all over, he can still move. However, his left arm is in exceptionally rough shape. Internally, Shiba admits how deeply frustrating this must be for Chihiro, yet admires how the boy remains completely composed, focusing strictly on what he can do rather than dwelling on his physical limitations. Thinking back on the goofy misadventures he, Kunishige, and Azami used to get into when they were 18, Shiba acknowledges Chihiro as a true prodigy. Suddenly, the phone on the desk rings with the promised call, and hearing it, Chihiro's eyes narrow in sharp determination. Meanwhile, at the abandoned Kagurabachi castle, 4 guards sit around a table placed along a walkway. One gets up to use the bathroom, prompting another to laugh and jokingly tell him to not bother coming back. A third guard remarks that keeping lookout is pointless since all they're doing is researching a single child, wondering why Sojo hired so many guards in the first place. The 4th guard points out that Sojo brought no personal bodyguards at all, with the rest agreeing that the monster is probably more than capable of protecting himself. At that exact moment, Sojo is relaxing at a local bathhouse when 3 Yakuza enforcers walk in. Sojo contemplates how Chihiro inadvertently revealed his identity as Kunishige's son. Sitting there in the warm water, he muses that while the history books made no mention of the smith having a child, Chihiro is clearly a teenager with intimate knowledge of the enchanted blades, even wielding an unrecognized 7th one. While the connection makes sense, Sojo refuses to acknowledge Chihiro as Kunishige's rightful heir. The 3 Yakuza enter the bathroom area, their leader tossing a briefcase onto the tile floor. Sojo expresses surprise that they came all of this way just to return it. The Yakuza leader irritably responds that Sojo warned them the stone was traceable, expressing his anger at being put at risk of being tracked. When Sojo asks if their test of the Datanseki weapon was successful, their leader states that while they eliminated their target, their sorcerer's body violently exploded in the process. The Yakuza demands heavy financial compensation, arguing that exploding wasn't a part of the bargain. Sojo snickers, pointing out that he kept his promise. He offered them power on par with the enchanted blades that would literally blow them away. Infuriated, the leader orders his 2 goons to attack, but moments later, Sojo brutally dismembers all 3, painting the bathhouse red with blood. Staring upward, Sojo reflects on how controlling Datanseki remains an unsolved puzzle. Theoretically, their experimental process is flawless, yet a critical element is still missing. He recalls Chihiro's scathing words that Sojo doesn't understand anything. He steps out of the bath, wondering if his failure stems from a fundamental lack of understanding of the enchanted blades themselves. Slinging his coat over his shoulders, Sojo casually tells the terrified bathhouse receptionist to call the police. Internally, he remains absolute. He must fight Chihiro again. If the boy really is Kunishige's son, killing him will force Sojo to deepen his own connection to and understanding of Cloud Gouger. Retrieving Cloud Gouger and his personal belongings from the front desk, Sojo steps outside. Looking up at the surrounding rooftops, he notes that the perfect warm-up has just arrived. All 6 members of the anti-Cloud Gouger Special Forces are standing across from him, weapons at the ready. Breaking his silence, Sojo remarks that before the Sete War, sources were essentially phantoms to society due to an unwritten rule forbidding them from interacting with the general public. After the war, the Kamunabi stepped in as the official organization to maintain public order. Special Forces Commander Ikuto Hagiwara dryly asks if that dramatic monologue is just Sojo's way of confirming he's ready to fight. Internally, he notes that Sojo is unnaturally calm, almost as if he was actively waiting for them, making him extremely difficult to read. Sojo simply replies that he's ready and draws Cloud Gouger. At Kagurabachi Castle, the 3 guards at the table begin to wonder why their companion hasn't returned from the bathroom. One jokes that he must have taken the "don't come back" comment literally, though another points out that nobody would take that seriously. Suddenly, the 3rd guard notices a small, ink-black goldfish floating through the air nearby. Following the spectral fish back toward the corridor, they discover their comrade's lifeless body, with Chihiro standing silently above it. In the guard room, a phone on the desk starts to vibrate with an incoming call. The blonde guard picks it up, trembling. The guy on the other end complains that he's bored since he's out in the middle of nowhere. The blonde guard quickly stammers that he'll call him back because he has a sudden stomachache. Hanging up the phone, the blonde guard desperately tries to ignore the corpses of his comrades as he looks up at Chihiro, shaking as he asks what he wants from him. Elsewhere, Genichi Sojo observes his opponent, noting that while they are clearly elite, he had still hoped Shiba and Azami would be present to truly test the absolute limits of Cloud Gouger. As everyone springs into action, the woman activates Gansui, launching a massive section of earth high into the sky. Previously, on the hospital roof, Chihiro began by breaking down Cloud Gouge's 3 core abilities: Yui, which summons ice for both offense and defense, Ko, which generates water and dense mist for disorientation and concealment, and Mei, the blade's devastatingly lethal lightning strike. The masked guy acknowledges how ridiculously strong Cloud Gouge was, leading the chick to ask if Azami could join the fight as well. He clarified that only the 6 members of the special forces would deploy for the mission. Hagiwara then brought up the Kamonabi leadership's firm stance. Eliminating Sojo would not magically resolve the border crisis. Fei-san added that they also had to factor in the upcoming Rakuzachi auction and the mysterious Hishaku organization lurking in the shadows. Hagiwara agreed, explaining that the Kamonabi could not afford to commit all of their high-level military strength to a single location. Returning to the immediate threat of Sojo, Hagiwara emphasized that defeating an enchanted blade required far more than just raw power. It demanded a precise, flawless strategy. In the present, 4 squad members charged directly towards Sojo's position. The Yuji-looking dude reports that the ocean is 2 kilometers ahead, while the Gansui sorcerer grimaces under the immense strain of maintaining control over such a large object. Sojo manifests a cracking cloud dragon around his body, recognizing that his opponents intentionally elevated the battlefield to prevent citywide destruction. Grinning, he dares them to give it everything they've got. He instantly fires a rapid Mei at Hagiwara, but our Gansui queen raises a dense wall of earth just in time to absorb the blast. With throwing knives clamped between his fingers, Hagiwara soars over the collapsing wall, while the masked dude attacks from the flank, transforming his arms into solid metal as he lunges in. Sojo counters with a swift sword strike, which the Kamonabi member barely blocked, yelling out in pain from the impact. Behind Sojo, Hagiwara hurls 2 pairs of throwing knives. Sojo quickly kicks Maski away and slashes backwards with Cloud Gouge, creating a small wall of ice to trap the projectiles in. However, using his signature sorcery, Jikai, Hagiwara drives them straight through the ice barrier and forces Sojo into the defensive. Simultaneously, the 6th man Jamal Crawford enlarges his hands and slams down from above. Sojo dodges just in time, beginning to see through the Kamonabi's relentless assault patterns. Back at the hospital, Chihiro had warned the squad to constantly barrage Sojo with relentless attacks to prevent him from charging. Charging was a core mechanism that concentrated and amplified the raw power of Cloud Gouge's strikes. Chihiro noted that during their initial duel, Sojo hadn't yet mastered the charging technique, but warned he would quickly adapt. Chihiro stressed that if Sojo mastered charging, he would become infinitely more dangerous, as surviving a fully charged strike would be virtually impossible. In the present, Sojo realizes the Kamonabi are actively suppressing his ability to charge his blade, prompting him to pivot to a tactic that requires no prep time. Unleashing Ko, Sojo erupts a torrent of water across the platform, thoroughly soaking all 4 sorcerers. He immediately follows up with an uncharged Mei. The lightning instantly travels through the wet ground, blasting all 4 agents off their feet. Seeing his enemies temporarily incapacitated, Sojo immediately begins charging a max output Mei. Pushing through the pain, Hagiwara recalls the bathroom break back at the hospital. As Chihiro washed his hands, he explained that Sojo could bypass the lack of charge by combining Ko and Mei, using water's conductivity to guarantee a hit, sacrificing sheer power for unavoidable accuracy. When Hagiwara asked if that combo had a vulnerability, Chihiro noted that if the squad applied enough pressure, Sojo would inevitably default into the Ko-Mei strategy. Chihiro instructed the team to intentionally take that hit, as an uncharged Mei wouldn't deal fatal damage. In the present, Hagiwara smirks through his injuries, as even an uncharged Mei still hurts like hell. During the same conversation, Maski had popped his head out of the store to ask why they should willingly let themselves get hit, with the Feitan clone adding that doing so would give Sojo the exact opening he needed to charge a full power attack. Chihiro dropped a bombshell. They need Sojo to fire a fully charged Mei. While it is extremely dangerous, a max output charge leaves Cloud Gouge completely drained during its 10 to 20 second cooldown period. Hagiwara had surmised the trap. They would attack relentlessly, so Sojo believed they were terrified of his charge, baiting him to using the Ko-Mei combo, in turn creating the opening that they needed. When Maski asked how they would survive the actual charged blast, Chihiro replied that an elite unit like theirs would surely find a way. Back in the present, as Sojo's charge nears completion, Hagiwara barks a command for his squad to leap into the air. The sorcerers immediately spring high above the platform. Confident that he has won here, Sojo releases his fully charged Mei, just as Hagiwara aims his Jikai sorcery straight down at the water-soaked ground. The catastrophic lightning strike detonates against the platform, but Hagiwara's magnetic pulse repels the electrified water and debris violently upward. The following shockwave propels Sojo and the surge of water into the air, almost to the exact same height as the jumping Kamonabi. The massive lightning bolt disperses completely into the airborne water around Sojo, fizzling out harmlessly and turning the natural synergy of Ko and Mei against him. Covered in blood, Hagiwara looks down and mocks Sojo for falling directly into their trap, noting that while they haven't won yet, they have seized complete control of the battle. Musing that they now have a free 10-second cooldown window, Hagiwara watches as 3 agents dive down from above to finish the target. His eyes rolling back in shock, Sojo realizes with bitter clarity that these perfect counter tactics could have only been designed by Chihiro. Simultaneously, at Kagurabachi Castle, the guard Chihiro is interrogating breaks under pressure. He reveals that the west door is the only route without sorcerer guards. Down in the basement, a second staircase leads deeper underground to a large 2-chamber floor. Cha is being held in the laboratory on the far side of that chamber, guarded by heavy sorcerer security. Asking if Chihiro was already injured, the guard bitterly spits out his wish that Chihiro gets sliced to pieces. A short time later, Chihiro crouches quietly in the rafters above the underground chamber, glaring down at the mohawked sorcerers patrolling below. Sitting there, Chihiro recalls his father's words regarding the true realm of the enchanted blades. Because Datsenseki is a natural mineral, the enchanted blades possess a unique quality that Kunishige himself struggled to put into plain words. The absolute limits and properties of a blade are not fixed. They can completely transform and evolve, depending entirely on the wielder. During their prior strategy session in the hospital, Chihiro shared his late father Kunishige's core teachings regarding the true realm of the enchanted blades with the Kamanabe squad. According to Kunishige, the enchanted blades possess an inexplicable power that transcends pure theory, a power that shapes and evolves a blade's abilities based on the bearer's body, spirit, will, and depth of understanding in ways unknown to even Kunishige himself. In the present, Shiba teleports near a secluded shed on the outskirts of Sojo's stronghold at the Kagurabachi Castle. Shiba had arrived to raid the castle alongside Chihiro, having caught up to him while Chihiro was interrogating the surviving guard. The two then quickly established their operational priorities, rescue Cha, then uncover details regarding the Hishaku and Shinichi. Through interrogation, they learned about a small shed that served as an entrance to an underground storage room heavily guarded by sorcerers. They agreed to split up. Chihiro would infiltrate the facility to rescue Cha, while Shiba investigated the shed. Before parting ways, Shiba strictly warned Chihiro to focus exclusively on rescuing Cha and to avoid engaging any sorcerers, as his body was in no condition to fight. Remembering Shiba's warning, Chihiro kneels quietly in the rafters, watching the 2 mohawk sorcerers guarding the stairwell door leading down to Cha's cell. Having already scouted the floor, he knows this guarded entrance is the only way down. His hand trembles violently as he watches one of the sorcerers turn to head downstairs to oversee the medical procedures about to be performed on Cha. Dark fury clouds Chihiro's expression, but before he can move, a visor-wearing sorcerer ambushes him from the shadows, knocking him from the rafters. The heavy crash of his fall echoes all the way out of the castle, where Shiba even hears it. Sensing Chihiro's immediate peril, Shiba prepares to teleport down to assist him, but 2 sorcerers burst out from the shed to engage him. Forced to prioritize the enemies right in front of him, Shiba turns to deal with them despite his desperate urge to help Chihiro. Deep below everything, the scientists pause their operation upon receiving news of an intruder, and Cha instantly realizes that Chihiro has arrived. Hitting the ground himself, Chihiro draws N10, steeling himself to face the visor-wielding sorcerer and the mohawked guards blocking the path to the lab. The visor-wearing sorcerer reveals that his keen sense of smell for blood alerted him to the wounded guards outside of the castle. The severe toll on Chihiro's injuries caused his body to throb and sweat pours from his face. Suddenly, a seed-like object rolls across the floor to Chihiro's feet, before sprouting into a sorcerer with thick vines replacing his arms. Chihiro dodges and counters with Kuro, but the plant guy casually parries the flying slash. Immediately after, a heavy-set dude wearing a samurai helmet thrusts a steam-propelled fist forward. Chihiro attempts to parry the blow, but the raw force smashes him violently into a wall. As the mohawked sorcerer mocks his pathetic, pointlessly heroic arrival, Chihiro briefly considers activating the Shiki, but realizes he lacks the endurance to eliminate them all before collapsing. Instead, he uses Koro to slice the room's light fixtures, plunging the hall into darkness before retreating. The enemy sorcerers taunt his retreat and call for reinforcements, eager to not only kill the intruder, but also claim his enchanted blade as a prize. Chihiro ducks behind a shoji door far from the patrolling guards and searching sorcerers. Slumping against the wall, he is overwhelmed by self-doubt, repeatedly wishing he were at full strength, believing that if he were healthy, saving Cha would be effortless. Then, remembering how multiple opponents had mocked his weakness, he begins to question if he could even defeat all of these men at all, even at his peak. He tries to push the toxic thoughts aside and wait for Shiba's help, but a bitter voice in his mind insists that if he sits and waits, Cha will be lost forever. Suddenly, a memory of his father surfaces. He recalls sitting outside their home in a deep gloom, where Kunishige approached and gently asked what was bothering him. Chihiro confessed that he wondered if there was any point in trying to follow his father's footsteps if he could never hope to match his greatness. Kunishige bluntly agreed, telling Chihiro he would indeed never be anything like him. As Chihiro flatly lamented his father's harsh, casual response, Kunishige clarified his point. Chihiro was serious and logical, just like his mother, and that seriousness often made him narrow-minded. He explained that while he deeply appreciated how seriously Chihiro took his teachings, he told his son that he must never lose sight of who he was, Chihiro Rokuhira. Switching the tone up, Kunishige pointed out all of the things his son could do that he couldn't. Returning to his goofy-ass pose, Kunishige instructed Chihiro to stay calm and remain flexible whenever his vision grew too narrow. He told his son to find his own hand shape, making Chihiro smile and laugh through tears. In the present, the Mohawk twins instructed the researchers to proceed with Cha's surgery, assuring them that the intruder has fled and will be dealt with shortly. Dragging Cha out of her cell, the researchers cold-heartedly tell her that there is no hope left. Meanwhile, the visor-wearing sorcerer patrols the dark hallways with several guards, tracking Chihiro by the scent of his freshly spilled blood. Suddenly, the sorcerer catches Chihiro's scent approaching them and turns to catch him entering the room. Chihiro silently recalls his father's advice to remain calm and flexible. He reviews Enten's 3 foundational techniques: Kuro, long-range slashes, Aka, absorption and redirection, and Nishiki, energy cloaking and physical augmentation. As the concept of true flexibility resonates within his mind, Chihiro whispers a silent apology to Cha, promising her that he will end this nightmare immediately. Suddenly, a massive swarm of ink-black goldfish materializes in the air around the visor-wearing sorcerer and his guards, identical to the singular ones used for standard Kuro slashes. Stealing his resolve, Chihiro prepares to unleash his newest evolved technique, Kuro Shred. Sometime in the past, Cha and her mother were enjoying a quiet meal together. Before they began eating, Cha's mother asked to inspect an injury Cha had recently sustained, but Cha reassured her that it had already completely healed. Noticing the rapid recovery, her mother asked if anyone else had witnessed the injury vanish, wanting her to be extremely cautious when school started. She explained the crucial importance of keeping Cha's ability an absolute secret, advising her to only share the truth with someone she trusted, warning that bad people would use her gift to do terrible things. Cha's mother admitted that she had once shared the secret of her powers with someone she loved, Cha's father, but he became terrified and abandoned them. When Cha asked if her mother was unhappy, her mother smiled and replied that having Cha made her the happiest person on the planet. At that moment, the doorbell rang. In the present, Chihiro unleashes Kuro Shred, cleanly bisecting the visor-wearing sorcerer in two. The sorcerer dies in utter shock, stunned that a blade that previously failed could now slice him in half. The mechanics of the technique are revealed. Chihiro's attack consists of 20 miniature slashes originating from 20 distinct tiny black goldfish. While each individual Kuro slash was reduced in size to maximize accuracy, every single one consumed the exact same amount of spirit energy as a full-sized Kuro. In exchange for burning through massive reserves of spirit energy, Kuro Shred allowed Chihiro to execute rapid, max-power slashes without placing a physical strain on his body. In that moment of absolute razor-sharp focus, Chihiro triggers a heightened state of spirit energy understanding. Channeling this breakthrough, he activates Nishiki and instantly slaughters the remaining guards in the room in a flash of movement. In a flashback now, Genichi Sojo recounts the grim history of the Konagi clan's downfall after capturing both Cha and her mother. The legend goes that consuming the flesh of a Kyoanagi clan member granted true immortality. Over a decade ago, in the aftermath of the Sete War, a mob attacked the Kyoanagi village, completely slaughtering their people. Sojo revealed that an informant sold him a secret. A single girl had escaped the massacre, Cha's mother, who fled the village at 13 and lived in hiding ever since. Sojo mockingly questions why she would ever bring another of her kind into a world as hellish as this, though he does appreciate having an extra specimen for his research. Over the months that followed, Cha and her mother had their flesh repeatedly carved away for the use in Sojo's Datanseki experiments. During a rare moment of respite, Cha's mother profusely apologized to her daughter, weeping and wishing she had never been her mother so Cha could have lived a normal, happy life. Through her own tears, Cha tried to comfort her, insisting she was happy as long as they were together. In the present though, Cha sits alone on the operating table as the Mohawk twins recall how reckless Cha's mother had been during her final moments, admitting it was genuinely impressive how she managed to escape her cell and kill several guards along the way. Cha remembers that fateful day. Her mother had successfully broken them out and located a small shaft for Cha to crawl through. Her mother apologized. She promised Cha she would hold off the guards for as long as possible. Cha screamed that she would stand fight beside her, but her mother was resolute. She wanted Cha to live a happy life. When Cha protested being separated, Mother turned and shouted at her with fierce, desperate determination to keep on running. Outside the barred doors, guards begin closing in, with the samurai helmet-wearing dude preparing to break through. Back in the present again, the mohawked henchmen recall how Cha's mother torched the lab equipment and set several researchers ablaze. In the past again, Cha's mother apologised one last time, telling Cha that everything would be okay, a lesson Cha herself had taught her. Tears streaming down her face, Cha then escaped out of Sojo's compound. Now back in the present, the mohawked henchmen remark that the lab equipment was repaired soon enough and it didn't take long to track down and recapture Cha. Outside in the courtyard, the samurai helmet-wearing sorcerer barks orders at the guards to stay alert. Unbeknownst to them, Chihiro is already weaving through the yard like a shadow. From a high roof, the plant sorcerer suddenly notices the samurai sorcerer lying dead along with every single guard patrolling the yard. He screams a warning that the intruder is in the guarding, but Chihiro materializes behind him and hits him with a hefty back shot. Moments later, arriving reinforcements find nothing but a graveyard of dead bodies. Down in the laboratory, the mohawked henchmen mock Cha, telling her that her escape and her mother's sacrifice were completely meaningless. Hearing that Chihiro is still advancing though, the twins decide that it's time to end the game, powering up their signature sorcery, Demon Cloak. Before they can even move though, Chihiro blurs down the stairwell and decapitates both the twins in a single lightning-fast stroke. Sheathing his blade, Chihiro turns towards Cha with a soft smile and hands her a fresh sandwich, quietly noting that this one isn't squished. Tears welling in her eyes, Cha takes the sandwich and asks what took him so long. Chihiro emerges from Sojo's laboratory, carrying Cha on his back, wincing in agony. It is revealed that Chihiro's previous activation of Nishiki was not used to enhance his speed or attack power as usual. Instead, he channeled the spirit energy internally to support his shattered body and lessen the physical strain. Despite this, the severe toll on his health remains painfully apparent. Cha anxiously asks about her now, and Chihiro reassures her that she is safe. Looking down, Cha notices Chihiro's mangled left hand and realizing that he is far from okay, insists that he give his hand to her. Focusing intently, the little girl recalls her mother's words. The Kyonagi clan's innate healing ability stems from a pure, overwhelming desire to stop pain and prevent harm. Concentrating all of her willpower, Cha unleashed her power, miraculously regenerating Chihiro's left arm enough to render it usable once more. As Chihiro and Cha step out into the courtyard, Shiba teleports in to meet them. Instantly, both Chihiro and Shiba sense a terrifying presence rapidly approaching. Chihiro quickly hands Cha off to Shiba. Shiba admits that while Chihiro is the one who needs to face this opponent, he can't help but worry about his current condition. Chihiro reassures him that he can fight, before double-checking the healing fully worked on him. In response, Cha simply looks at Chihiro and begs him not to die, to which he calmly thanks her. As Shiba teleports away with Cha to safety, Chihiro turns to face the approaching adversary. Unsheathing Enten, he activates its power, the vibrant, multicolored goldfish of Nishiki emerging and shimmering in the air behind him. Sometime prior, the intense aerial battle between Sojo and the anti-Cloud Gouger special forces reaches its climax. After his initial Mei attack was safely dispersed through the water, missing the Kamunabi agents, Sojo adapts instantly. Using the moisture lingering in the air, he expands the reach of his subsequent Yui strike, spawning massive spires of ice across the battlefield. Taking note of how seamlessly Sojo combines Ko and Yui, Feitan launches two metal poles into the platform behind Sojo. On a nearby floating landmass, the young bloke grows anxious over being kept on the sidelines, but our Gansui girl sternly tells him to stay calm, reminding him that he is their secret win condition. Rushing in, the sixth man uses his enlarged hands to pin Sojo's Cloud Gouger wielding arm, just as another two poles lands on the other side. Suddenly, Sojo begins crackling with intense electrical energy. Surprised by the sudden discharge, Kugara realizes that 10 seconds haven't passed since the large major attack and asks Hagiwara if they should alter their plan. Hagiwara internally realizes that Sojo may be tapping into Cloud Gouger's true realm, but orders Kugara to stick to the strategy and prepare his iron transformation. Casting Jikai, Hagiwara manipulates the ambient electromagnetic charge radiating off Sojo to launch the iron-armored masked sorcerer forward like a human railgun. Simultaneously, Feitan casts Jobaku, causing the 4 deployed poles to release binding energy that completely locks Sojo in place. Unable to dodge, Sojo takes a direct, devastating impact from Kugara that sends him hurtling over the platform's edge. I love this dude's design, but landing with Hagiwara, the sixth man retrieves Cloud Gouger. Hagiwara exclaims that with the enchanted blade successfully disarmed, taking down Sojo will be simple. In midair, lightning continues to surge across Sojo's body. He calls out Mei, and surprisingly, Cloud Gouger starts crackling in the hands of the sixth man. Because lightning naturally attracts lightning, the magnetic pole violently yanks Sojo upward towards his sword. The sudden acceleration eviscerates large portions of the mask and hand sorcerer's torsos as Sojo flies past them, catching Cloud Gouger directly in his jaws. Desperate, Hagiwara screams to Katane, crazy we got another name now, to initiate phase 2 and use it. Kazane begins casting, but before he can execute the spell, Sojo blitzes through the air and severs Kazane's arm, instantly cancelling the attack while simultaneously gashing the side of Gansui Girl's head. The final moments of the battle unfold off screen, and when the dust settles, Kazane is seen kneeling alone on a quiet beach, surrounded by floating debris in the ocean and probably the lifeless bodies of his fallen squad mates. Not that we can really even see them there, and honestly it's kinda crazy we didn't even get half their names. Back in the present, Sojo confronts Chihiro in the courtyard, casually setting the briefcase containing the Datinseki stone beside him down. Sojo muses that as his understanding of Cloud Gouger deepened through battle, he wasn't surprised that Mei's cooldown timer began to shorten. What did surprise him was his breakthrough afterward. Inspired by Chihiro's Nishiki, Sojo tried cloaking himself in Mei's lightning rather than discharging it outward. Chihiro remains completely silent. Though we can sense the tragic demise of the Kamunabi squad, he keeps his focus absolute. Sojo expresses genuine puzzle over how Chihiro is still able to stand, but notes that he has clearly unlocked a deeper understanding of his own blade as well. Although Sojo admits he has endless questions he wants to ask, he acknowledges their current situation leaves no room for casual conversation. Both warriors are grievously wounded, completely exhausted, and standing at the absolute pinnacle of their sword mastery. In this moment, both Chihiro and Sojo reach the exact same realization. They only have enough strength left for a single, final engagement. Coincidentally, both calculate their remaining operational window to be the exact same window, 12 seconds. The battle will be decided in a fraction of a breath. Simultaneously activating Nishiki and Mei, Chihiro and Sojo leap forward into their final clash. With 12 seconds remaining and with Mei and Nishiki active, Sojo and Chihiro fade into blinding blurs through the air, flying straight towards the Kaburato castle. With 11 seconds and 52 milliseconds remaining, they flash into view. Chihiro looks up and catches Sojo teleporting across the sky right in front of him. Slashing up, Chihiro connects and binds blades with Sojo, who happily glares back at him. The two converse not with words, but through the language of their blades, metaphorically depicted as sitting opposite each other in a quiet tea room, with tea and dango set for the two on the table. Sojo notes that offering the dango serves as his form of respect towards Chihiro. Sadly, he rejects his offer. Sojo says that Chihiro's frosty response is a tad disappointing, as he had hoped to engage in a proper dialogue. He admits that if they simply focus on slaughtering each other, it would be a tragic waste, especially since Chihiro has occupied his thoughts for some time now. Picking up a stick of dango, Sojo asks to confirm if Chihiro is truly the son of Kunishige. Chihiro curiously asks who told him, before realizing he was the one who let that detail slip a little bit earlier on. Setting the dango stick down, Sojo tells Chihiro that he helped him understand crucial truths. Though he still views his opponent's philosophy with distaste, he has come to accept it. Chihiro immediately states that Sojo must realize he is unworthy of wielding an enchanted blade, but he refutes this. Sojo firmly maintains that Cloud Gouger was formed to be a weapon of mass destruction. Chihiro's expression creases with derision, knowing full well how deeply his father revered life and the true purpose of swordsmithing. Sojo snaps back, ordering Chihiro to shut up, insisting that the messaging he received from the blades was purely to slaughter. Abruptly, Sojo admits his curiosity about what Kunishige was truly like, only to suddenly shout that he doesn't want to know. Sojo has already made up his mind and firmly believes in his vision. Just as Chihiro rescued Char by harmonizing with Enten, Cloud Gouger listened to and synergized with Sojo's absolute desire for slaughter. In reality, Chihiro and Sojo break apart from their initial clash near a ledge of the castle. Sojo rears back to slash downward, but Chihiro kicks out his leg to jam Sojo's arm, preparing a counterstrike of his own. Sojo shifts his head to dodge the incoming blow, passing Cloud Gouger to his left hand before launching a lightning-fast slash. Left with little to no time to react, Chihiro intentionally sacrifices his right arm, allowing it to be severed in order to reposition himself. Some would call that a massive blunder, but with 9 seconds and 4 milliseconds remaining, Sojo analyzes Chihiro's sacrificial tactic, noting that Chihiro's current speed far surpasses their previous duel, though his own raw strength remains superior. Within the tea room, Sojo states that he used to believe he could only speak for Kunishige's true intent. However, he now realizes anyone can claim to speak for him, which makes this battle essential to prove whose belief is supreme. With 7 seconds and 68 milliseconds remaining, Sojo mulls over the techniques he knows Chihiro commands besides Nishiki. Long-range slashes, which are Kuro, an absorption counter that absorbed Mei, which was Aka, and the charge technique Chihiro used as a lightning rod during their first duel. Given Chihiro's incredible speed, relying on Ko or Yui would be totally ineffective here, so he believes cloaking himself and going for a surprise strike is his best option. However, Sojo notes a critical constraint. He only has 12 seconds of spirit energy left for cloaking. any secondary use of spirit energy will severely restrict his movements. Deciding to forgo all trickery and discard his pride, Sojo doubles the spirit energy cloak in his body to twice his physical limit, ignoring the catastrophic body strain in exchange for absolute speed. Because of this, the time drops to only 3 seconds remaining. Though his remaining active time is halved, Sojo's newfound speed allows him to effortlessly blitz around, lunging directly at Chihiro from behind. In the tea room, Chihiro picks up a stick of dango. In reality, he speeds around Sojo's ambush and delivers a counter slash, tearing open the trim of his coat. Back in the room, Chihiro forces himself to eat the first piece of dango. He remembers his father telling him that katanas are ultimately weapons of murder, and that forging enchanted blades may not have been the right choice. On the beach, a distraught Kazune mutters bitterly that enchanted blades cannot be allowed to exist. Finishing the dango, Chihiro accepts that both he and Sojo can speak for his father's legacy. However, that exact realization is why he refuses to show Sojo an ounce of respect, declaring that he will cut Sojo down with even greater bloodlust. Seeing Chihiro hovering above him, Sojo pivots to slash upward, but Chihiro evades the blow and cleanly severs Sojo's left arm. Noticing our boy's explosive speed, Sojo swings back in to strike again. In truth, Chihiro had pushed the spirit energy cloak in his body to 3 times his physical limit. With 1 second and 47 milliseconds remaining, Chihiro approaches Sojo's back. Sojo instantly swings backward, executing the same counter-strike he used when they had their first duel. With only 89 milliseconds remaining and anticipating this attack, Chihiro abruptly deactivates Nishiki to decelerate his speed, causing Cloud Gouger to swing harmlessly through the empty air directly in front of him. Pulling his sword back, Chihiro readies Koro. Sojo realizes in horror that the upcoming Koro will detonate at point-blank range. With memories of working in the forge alongside his father flooding into his mind, Chihiro unleashes his stroke. The slash shrieks through the lightning of Sojo's mane and tears through the surrounding forest. Cloud Gouger itself is completely cut in two, ending the battle in Chihiro's absolute victory. Sojo gazes in utter shock at the blade wielder's feat, realizing that his own wound is fatal. Furthermore, the price of overloading his body with spirit energy is exacting a terrible toll, a physical collapse Sojo sees affecting Chihiro as well, as the young man coughs blood and sways unsteadily on his feet. Sojo croaks that he thought he had gone all in one last time by attempting to charge Mei at the end, but he never anticipated Chihiro breaking Cloud Gouger itself. He mutters that the enchanted blades must have chosen Chihiro. However, our boy also admits that the blade chose Sojo too. Without revealing the rest of Chihiro's final response, time jumps forward as Shiba catches a swaying, half-conscious Chihiro. Noticing the shattered pieces of Cloud Gouger nearby, Shiba praises Chihiro for a job well done. Suddenly, Shiba senses a subtle presence behind him. He turns around, but the dude teleports away before Shiba can even see him. Shiba's attention is quickly drawn away from this random suspicious dude by Chihiro, who is watching a bloodied Sojo drag himself up the castle stairs, groaning that he only needs one more attempt. Seeing this, Shiba notes that Sojo has only a few minutes left to live. Given that they have already gathered all of the necessary intelligence and torturing Sojo would accomplish nothing here, Shiba asks if he should finish him off, but Chihiro believes it unnecessary. Cha, having climbed off a kneeling Shiba, moves beside the seated Chihiro and asks to inspect his right arm. Chihiro hesitates to let the little girl touch the wound on his arm, but Cha insists, channeling her power in an attempt to heal it. Inside Kagurabachi Castle's laboratory, Sojo crawls through the wreckage. Most of the equipment lies destroyed, severed wires sparking in the dark. He spots the containment vat holding a raw piece of Datsenseki, still intact. Desperation and determination burning in his eyes, Sojo shatters the glass, declaring himself that he finally understands the enchanted blades and can therefore control the Datsenseki. Attempting to force the absolute last of his spirit energy into the stone, Sojo tries desperately to stand as an equal to Kunishige, but as surrounding wires spark violently, the Datsenseki reacts catastrophically to his force. Parts of Sojo's arm and body burst and fragment into pieces. Thrown backward by the shockwave, Sojo lies bleeding, wondering what crucial element he missed. Outside, Cha's attempt to rescue Chihiro's arm fails. Shiba gently consoles her though, reassuring her that no one expects her to master such complex magic immediately. Chihiro gently places a hand on her head, assuring her that her healing magic was vital to achieving victory. The conclusion of Chihiro's final words to Sojo is then finally revealed. He declared that Sojo would never stand as an equal to his father, and that Chihiro would cut him down every single time. Screaming Rokuhira's name, Sojo is consumed as a massive explosion detonates Kagurabachi Castle, just as Shiba teleports himself, Chihiro and Chara away to safety. 10 days later, at Kamonabe headquarters, Azami confirms that while Sojo's corpse has been positively identified, the anti-Cloud Gouger special forces suffered catastrophic casualties. Shiyumi Harima, Hajime Kugara, Kiyohiko Izuki, and Makoto Kishara lost their lives. Kazune Machi survived but lost his right arm, and Ikuto Hagawara remains unconscious and currently legless. I love that we didn't really get all of their names at all till after half of them died here, plus half of them dying early on is actually insane to me. Bro is out of pocket for that, but hopefully it goes to show the scale of people inside of the story in comparison to something like Jujutsu Kaisen, which I always thought that was kind of a downside to that series. The world seemed absolutely massive with sorcerer families, different continents wanting to be involved, but we really never saw anything outside of the two schools and the sorcerers inside of them. What about the hundreds of ex-students that went to the schools throughout the past 30 or 40 years, But the gas mask higher up notes that despite Sojo's death, the auctioning of the enchanted blade, Shinichi, at the upcoming Rakuzachi auction is still proceeding as planned. The leader, wearing a neck scarf, remarks that it was fortunate they maintained Kaichi. To his right, the dude affirms that recovering Shinichi remains their absolute top priority. This banging baddie then brings up that the main issue is choosing the next lifelong contract holder for Cloud Gouger, but is interrupted by Heimerdinger, who questions if they even have possession of Cloud Gouger. Lifelong contracts. Kunishige Rukuhira embedded built-in limiting mechanisms within every enchanted blade. When a sorcerer claims ownership of an enchanted blade, a permanent bond is established, granting only that specific individual access to its powers until their death. Ever since Kunishige's assassination and the murder of Cloud Gouger's original wielder, all surviving Seitei War veterans who held contracts with the remaining enchanted blades have been kept under the Kamonabi's strict protection. As long as their lives are safeguarded, those blades cannot be wielded by anyone else. Thus, up until Sojo's death, Cloud Gouger was the only unsealed blade capable of threatening the world. The OG then speaks up in response to the previous question. According to Kazune's official debriefing, Hagiwara's squad did not kill Sojo. He was executed by a youth claiming to be Chihiro Rokuhira, the son of Kunishige, who wielded a previously unknown 7th enchanted blade. Furthermore, search teams sweeping the castle ruins found no trace of Cloud Gouger, leading High Command to deduce that Chihiro claimed it. A brief flashback shows Azami meeting with Kazune before the report was submitted. Kazune noted how Chihiro had avenged his fallen squad, but voiced deep, bitter concerns regarding the continued existence of the enchanted blades, telling Azami he could no longer support leaving such catastrophic weapons unregulated. Back in the council chamber, the sideburn dude brings Azami back into the discussion, noting that while there were multiple reports of a 7th enchanted blade, they lacked crucial intelligence on Chihiro himself. He accuses Azami and those like him loyal to Kunishige that they had hidden his son. Kuro immediately retorts, arguing that the Rokuhira family had to be hidden because corrupt factions within the Kamonabi were actively trying to steal the blades. The big guy cuts off their bickering, declaring that the internal blame was extensively debated 3 years ago following Kunishige's murder, and that the council agreed to focus entirely on retrieving the blades. For now, he states that their immediate operational objective is to locate Chihiro Rokuhira and recover both Cloud Gouger and the 7th enchanted blade. Recognizing that the anti-Cloud Gouger special forces were severely outmatched, Kaisen declares that High Command will no longer hold back against the threat of 2 enchanted blades. To handle this threat, they decide to deploy the Kamonabi's absolute strongest combatant, the sole individual capable of standing toe-to-toe against an enchanted blade. Simultaneously, Hiyuki Kagari is formally summoned. As the Kamonabi's ultimate weapon, she is officially granted authorization to release Flame Bone up to the torso. Awesome, what an insanely dope way to start off a story, but that there brings us up to chapter 18 and the end of the first arc, the Vs Sojo arc. If you guys did enjoy the video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe as it really helps with pushing my content to a bunch of new amazing people. Also, for those who have been asking, once I catch up with these arc videos, I plan to cover Kagurabachi on a more consistent basis, treating it like I did previously with Jujutsu Kaisen. This series is just fantastic and I can't wait to go over everything inside of it so far. Either way, enough of me rambling on. For now, it's been your professional degenerate Diavolo, and I'll see you all in a bit. Bye.